Operation Dynamo, the shore between hope and silence. 26th of May, 1940, early morning. The sea looked calm that morning of May 26, 1940. A gray horizon stretched endlessly beyond the shoreline near Dunkirk, where thousands of Allied soldiers stood in silence, boots sinking into wet sand. Smoke drifted slowly above the coast, carried by a cold wind that smelled of fuel and salt. Every distant engine sound made heads turn at once. More than 300,000 men were trapped, and by that morning, the possibility of rescue felt uncertain, almost unreal. (10 to 24 May, 1940). Between May 10th and May 24th, 1940, the German offensive through Western Europe unfolded with overwhelming speed. Armored divisions broke through defensive lines, forcing Allied forces into a chaotic withdrawal across Belgium and northern France. By May 24th, the remaining troops had been pushed back to a shrinking coastal perimeter, their retreat ending at the waters near Dunkirk. Behind them, advancing forces. Ahead of them, the English Channel. The encirclement, 24th to 26th, May 1940. From May 24th to May 26th, the beaches filled rapidly. Columns of exhausted soldiers arrived day and night, forming long queues that stretched along the coast. German air raids intensified, turning the shoreline into a constant cycle of explosions and waiting. Supplies ran low. Sleep came in fragments. Time blurred into a single, tense stretch of uncertainty. The impossible decision, night of 26th, May 1940. On the evening of May 26, 1940, the British government authorized a massive evacuation effort. The plan received its operational name, Operation Dynamo. Naval forces mobilized immediately, but it became clear the mission would require far more than warships. So the call went out across southern England. Any vessel capable of crossing the Channel was needed. The little ships, 27th of May to 1st of June, 1940. Beginning May 27th, the first waves of small civilian boats joined the evacuation. Fishing vessels, lifeboats, ferries, and private yachts crossed the Channel repeatedly between May 27th and June 1st. They navigated smoke-filled skies, floating debris, and constant air attacks. From the beaches, soldiers watched the horizon slowly fill with unlikely rescuers, a fleet not defined by firepower, but by determination. The little ships, 27th of May to 1st of June, 1940. Beginning May 27th, the first waves of small civilian boats joined the evacuation. Fishing vessels, lifeboats, ferries, and private yachts crossed the Channel repeatedly between May 27th and June 1st. They navigated smoke-filled skies, floating debris, and constant air attacks. From the beaches, soldiers watched the horizon slowly fill with unlikely rescuers, a fleet not defined by firepower, but by determination. The miracle of survival, 26th of May to 4th of June, 1940. For 9 days, from 26th of May to 4th of June, 1940, the evacuation continued almost without pause. Night operations proved crucial as darkness offered some protection from airstrikes. By June 4th, the final ships departed, bringing the total evacuated to more than 338,000 troops. The beaches that once symbolized entrapment became a passage back to survival. Consequences, June 1940 and after. In the days following June 4th, 1940, the rescued troops arrived in Britain. Public reaction blended relief with realism. The Army had survived, but the war was far from over. Throughout June 1940, Dunkirk became a symbol of resilience, reshaping morale and reinforcing the determination to continue fighting. For the soldiers who returned, however, the memory of those beaches remained vivid long after the headlines faded. Closing reflection. Legacy beyond 1940. Looking back on the events of May to June 1940, Dunkirk stands as one of history's most profound examples of collective survival. It wasn't a decisive victory. It was something quieter and perhaps more human. A moment where courage emerged not only from strategy, but from endurance, cooperation, and fragile hope. If everything can change in a matter of days, what does that say about the fragile line separating our present from chaos? The waves continued to break on the shore long after the last ship disappeared into the horizon. But the echo of those days remains, a reminder that history is shaped not only by those who advance, but by those who refuse to vanish. Dunkirk was not a victory in the traditional sense. There was no advance, no territory gained, no immediate celebration. There was something rarer, survival. On those cold shores, surrounded by the enemy and the sea, hundreds of thousands of men discovered that courage doesn't always mean moving forward. Sometimes courage is holding on. It's waiting. It's trusting that going home can also be an act of heroism. The evacuation at Dunkirk during Operation Dynamo showed the world that the line between defeat and hope can be surprisingly thin. And when the words of Winston Churchill echoed, they weren't promises of an easy victory. They were a reminder that the fight would go on. Because Dunkirk teaches us that even when everything seems lost, survival is the first step toward changing history. And sometimes, the most decisive moment of a war is simply living long enough to see the next sunrise